welcome everyone. This is Bimlesh Gunndurao from PitchCamp, and today we have Srinath Sridharan, a distinguished business leader in the Indian ecosystem. Very glad to have him on our show today, and he's our first guest speaker on the leadership series of PitchCamp, where we bring in different perspective of business leadership and what does it take to build a very successful business in India, serving the India market or even serving the global market from India. So today our speaker comes with a very distinguished track record and experience. So I'll just quickly introduce him. Srinath Sridharan is a business leader, member of various boards and industry associations, a mentor and a transformation coach. His corporate stints includes automobiles, advertising, consumer business, financial services industries. He's held board memberships across regulated listed financial services entities, across housing finance, asset management, life insurance, general insurance space, and fintech firms. He advises PE firms as part of their portfolio companies' advisory boards and to mentor some of the founders of those investee companies. He works with leadership teams in enabling transformation of organizations with complex cities of talent, culture, conflict, generation, change of promoters, key management, M&A cultural issues, and issues of business scale and size. So, I'm extremely delighted to have Srinath on our show, and it's an honor and privilege to have him as well. So, welcome, Srinath. Thank you so much for being part of PitchCamp.
Thank you, Bimlesh. It's a delight to be back with a friend and a fellow schoolmate. I think both of us will behave very nicely on this call, not as schoolmates, and maintain the decorum of the industry.
Yeah, wonderful, absolutely. So, you've had a very interesting, career. We parted ways after school, and we got in touch after several years. When I was trying to build our healthcare platform, pharmacy.com. And we have had some amazing conversations, and I got to also understand, your, breadth and depth of, industry expertise that you have built over your, career over 24 years. And, now you're on a sabbatical and taking a different worldview of things. So in today's talk, I want to pick your brains on, on the key topic of leadership in crisis. Since you have also donned the role of a leadership coach and working on the transformational area. Talk to me about, in general, how does one define crisis in business, right? And then we'll start from there, and then we'll go down to the present situation of how companies need to look at handling COVID.
Sure. Let's look at what's a crisis. Crisis is something that you never anticipated or planned for. In our personal lives, it could be on a daily basis. It could be very minor. You go out of your residence and you suddenly realize in the cab or your car that you forgot your wallet. It could be as minor as that, or very, very life-threatening or business-threatening. The threatening of the very existence of yourself or your business, and that's a very, very large crisis. What we call the existential crisis.
Right.
Of course, every business globally, especially the tech platforms and the startups that you work with, they are going through the concept crisis on a daily basis. They are forced, and they are supposed to actually showcase the proof of concept. And today, almost all businesses, thanks to COVID, globally are going through an existential crisis. A lot of supply chain disruption is happening. A lot of supply chain of talent is going to happen. We still haven't seen the magnitude of the retrenchments and the pain that will come with existential crisis.
Right.
And I think crisis, if we accept crisis, and here I want to quote a very famous author, Dr. Scott Peck, in his book, The Road Less Traveled. He starts the book with the very first sentence, which says, "Life is difficult, accept it." And in that context, and I'm not a naysayer, I'm not a negative person at all, I'm a realist. I look forward to every single day. So if you say that life is difficult, everything is a challenge, and you're ready for the challenge. It's almost like our military training. You're equipped to deal with arms and ammunition, you're equipped to deal with difficult situations, difficult terrains, lack of sleep, lack of food. And if you go through that training, you are actually not anticipating on a daily basis that there's going to be a war. But the fact is, you're geared up for a war. And I think that's what is missing in all our B schools. If you look at the curriculum of our business schools, we all have almost pampered our next generation to move from classroom to boardroom. That's a feeling. And I think crisis suddenly hits them hard, saying that, oh my God, how do I deal with it? There is no textbook solution at all. So I think that's where, when I look at your own journey, Farm Easy and others, it's how you adopted and adapted to the environment around you, and how you scaled up and scaled down, how you took calls and decisions. It's a personal journey that each of us go through on a daily basis. And there's no replicating a book at all on this. Everybody's formula and solution is different.
Right. And especially when there's a global crisis of this scale, there's no playbook for anyone to refer, not to, or someone who has experienced it in the past. I think the last such global situation came was in 1918, and many of them are not around here today, right? To share how businesses managed and survived there. So this is great. So fundamentally, it's an existential crisis. So business leaders, decision making, your traditional way of decision making, which is predominantly data based and little bit of instinct based, goes for a toss, and it's all about fear, anxiety, the fear of unknown. What's going to happen tomorrow? Should I plan for a short-term existential challenge, or a larger or time frame existential challenge? So as a business coach, or as someone who has been on large companies' boardrooms, how do some of these conversations move around? And today, when you're sitting across with these founders, as a coach, how much of these conversations have changed? And talk us through now how their decision making process has fundamentally evolved from a data to a fear driven based psychosis.
Sure. I think fear is a primal emotion. Right from a child, and as we grow along, we have it. And fear cannot replace, or bravado cannot replace fear. They coexist in life. And one of the biggest change that I realized in the conversations over the last 4 months, pre-COVID and post-COVID, is this. A lot of them, especially the startup ecosystem, were talking about scale, growth. They were talking about new markets, and also some of them were talking about, let's admit, very, very fancy valuation. I could hear dollar conversations and not rupee conversations. And today, I think we've all come back on terra firma, where we are talking about who's my customer? How do I reach my customer? Is there a cheaper way of reaching my customer? Am I improving the quality of life for my customer? Because fundamentally, globally, business is all about adding value to our consumers. If we cannot add value to each of our consumers, we have no business asking for their business, whether it is B2B or B2C. That's a reality. And I think COVID has made that impact, stare very, very stark. The second one that I am surprised, and I shouldn't be surprised having seen some of this, is the ability of a lot of young entrepreneurs to raise capital, equity capital, in the last few years was phenomenal. And let's not mistake exuberance of youth with experience of a mature professional. I think somewhere they will have to coexist. So the fear that the startups will displace those who are experienced is a myth. And that's something very, very proven. And I will qualify it why I say so. If you are able to raise equity capital worth, let's say hundreds of crores, but the fact is, if you are staring with taking a hard-nosed business decision, dealing with people, dealing with your regulator, dealing with shutting down of certain units, certain products, you're dealing with a volatility of your emotions, your investors, and as you said, the data sets, right? All the data sets can tell you that, hey, your business is going to grow, and the 4 months just hang in there. But the fact is, the next 4 months, you may not even exist if you cannot trim off your business. Right. So that's a stark one that I think most of the entrepreneurs are facing now. The ability of raising equity or capital in a good flowing market, doesn't mean you have the ability to deal with a crisis and the associated emotions. Imagine if you have to let go of 1,000 people in your organization. It's heart-wrenching.
Right.
There are far better humane ways of doing it, yes, of course, but it takes away a lot of your emotions along with it, because you have built your organization. And this is exactly what I always lead on to. The concept of family business has been prevalent for centuries globally. The family-owned businesses. I mean, we have large-scale family-owned businesses in India. We are into large infra businesses as well, and what I call the real economy businesses. But the fact is, they've gone through historically those decisions time in, time out again. While the globe might have seen a large crisis 100 years ago, in India, we have seen almost every 10 years we have seen a crisis, right? Our pre-independence, then the independence, then the Pakistan war, then the China war, then we went through a slump, the national emergency, then pre-liberalization time, and then when we liberalized. And we've always also, as a Asian country, we've also faced the Malaysian currency issue, the SARS issue, then the global financial crisis in 2008 also had a minor impact. And today, the world is far more interconnected, right. Which means your investor or your lender could be sitting in a small town in Canada, but the fact is you're interconnected. So we cannot wish away that it doesn't happen even if COVID were not as prevalent in India, we still would have an impact, because your investor is getting impacted and will pull out money from the domestic markets. Your lender would say, I want the money up front and I would rather discount it for me because I want to retain cash. I mean, all these are natural. So coming back to your question, this is something that a lot of entrepreneurs did not relate to previously. They said, I have an idea and I've raised 100 crores and I will expand, and my next set of valuation would be 1,000 crores. I think that paradigm has kind of shifted. What is it? Who's my customer? We're going back to the basic. Who, what, when, why, and how. And I think if the pitch book for every entrepreneur is made as simple as that, the 4 W's and 1 H, I think then we'll be doing far more justice to the Indian ecosystem. And especially those who are serving the Indian consumers have suddenly realized that all our needs and wants, I mean, you're in Bangalore, and Bangalore has got a lot of people who are from outside of Bangalore and working there. Similar as Mumbai, where I live, or top 6 or 7 of our cities have the same style. And the point is, how are we going to attract them back, hold them back? How are we going to ensure that we give them dignity, respect in each of our businesses? And I think that's what is going to determine the sustained success of anybody who comes back. I think crisis is a great opportunity. People recoup if you can get through this, rebuild your business. I'm not saying that there might be an outlier event or not, but you will build business far robustly. I think every crisis makes a man out of a boy, or a stronger man out of a man.
Absolutely, fantastically well said. I think couple of areas where you said that there's no playbook to deal with this scenario, and we and also in B schools, the direct shift from a classroom to a boardroom. That's a great analogy on how I think for a very long time we as technology entrepreneurs, or even as basic entrepreneurs, we have only seen crises which are our own doing, right? Which is predominantly self-manifested from an entity point of view. It could be due to cash flow, or it could be excessive growth. But things that were in control have now gone out of control. But seldom some of these lessons have been passed on to the next set of entrepreneurs in the ecosystem. Today, what is happening is, now there's a lot more outreach happening to, people with larger, more experience, to have a different worldview. There's a lot more outreach happening between entrepreneurs within the ecosystem to say that, hey, how are you dealing with crisis? I'm trying to do this. What are you doing? So in this way, there's a lot more collaboration between the founders that are happening, where conversations are increasing. However, culturally, we have been conditioned mentally to not to talk about crisis in our lives, right? And how does this affect one's, mental health and the strength required to deal with this, to say that, hey, now I'm not alone, but it's okay, but I still need to take these decisions. talking to people is going to be hard, and reflecting on my own business and my journey and now where I need to take my business forward is a very heart-wrenching exercise right now. What are the things that you are seeing on how some entrepreneurs are able to deal with this, and some who are still struggling and not knowing how to go about it?
Sure, I think it's a very, very valid question and very relevant to the context of today, the crisis around us. I think it's very cultural, right? We don't speak about failures. We celebrate success, and nobody remembers the number two guy or the number two company.
Right.
Sadly, that's a reality. And let's say even the number one guy, if he becomes number two, we just forget him. And that's the world. And we can all say that's the ideal of the world and live with it. Or just say, hey, why don't we start celebrating and learning from our failures? Look at corporate India. I mean, we have thousands of failures of a business model didn't change on time, business model failed, or so many things. And can we learn from them and celebrate failures and learn from them? I think if we can do that, I think our boardroom conversations will be far richer, our classroom conversations will be far richer. I mean, the B schools have used historically for the last 30-35 years the concept of case study of successful companies.
Right.
Can you take 3 examples of companies which did not innovate on time, which failed, which did not transform? I think transformation is going to be the biggest challenge.
Right.
I think in that context, the entrepreneurs I see who are able to cope are able to openly talk about what did not work rather than gloating on their achievements, past achievements and past glories. I think that's something to learn from their personality type. They're willing to talk about failure. Of course, I give them all the credit, and rightfully they may not talk about it in their boardroom because their investors are also sitting there. And this is a society, let's face it, we are judged every moment. You are judged, and especially if you're a successful company and a successful entrepreneur, everything that you do or say is public today. Unfortunately, there is no privacy or private space for conversations at all. So which means their ability to say, I failed, I tried, this does not work, can I try something else? The ability to have open conversations is what I think making them stay stable, stay composed and calm. I think this is about almost therapeutic, right? If you have any mental health issue, and let's face it, mental health is not a negative topic at all. You have a cold and a cough, you go to a general practitioner and you want to clear your mind. Either you talk to somebody that you feel comfortable and trustworthy, or you go and pay a professional to talk. In the business context, I see people like me who are transformation coaches actually talking to entrepreneurs who don't want to be judged by their bankers and investors. And in some cases, the investors have made the introduction to me for them. And it is them saying that, hey, have a conversation, clear your mind, so that your own mind, when you are ready to take a decision, has gone through all kinds of conversations, good, bad, ugly. And then when you take a decision, you are owning it up.
Right.
I think all good decisions are those, it might be right or wrong, but good decisions are all about, can you own it up? You don't want to shy away from your own decision. And I think that's a hallmark of a classic failure of an entrepreneur. Entrepreneurs succeed because they take bold decisions and they stand by it. They're not shy of saying, hey, that did not work, let me move on. And that's what I'm seeing, that people are ready to speak about failures. People are ready to talk about what they want to try, pilot it, without shying away from it. I think that's what is also going to make a decision, because it mentally gears them up. In a crisis, I've seen one thing. People who pay attention to their personal health, to their emotional well-being, can face a crisis far stronger, far longer as well. You never know how this COVID is going to shape up, right, globally. It might be over in the next 1 month. It might be over, probably it might take under 2 years. But the economic impact and the market impact that it has left us, it's going to last for a couple of quarters. So it's almost like running a couple of marathons together. So if you don't have the energy, the mental, physical and the emotional well-being, and this is the time I always say that invest in yourself. If you can believe in thousands of people, why don't you believe in yourself? Invest in yourself. I'm sure you can spend an hour. Some of them take to gymming, some of them are into spirituality, some of them are into yoga. Whatever you think can help you emotionally, mentally, physically, do it. And the classic example of watch out for what you eat. And I've heard cases of, in a crisis, you reach out to a bag of chips. or a coffee or a cigarette. These are things, small little things. It might sound very trivial, but over a long period of time, it plays a greater role in your own physical health. And this is where I think entrepreneurs need small little one guidance. Take care of yourself first. If you're not well, you cannot take care of the people in your company and your company. Be fit. It is a war. It is a battle. It's a long-term battle. So crisis, in a nutshell, a lot of entrepreneurs who are making the cut and facing this better than others are those who are taking care of themselves and ready to admit failures and things that don't work, and who are open to ideas, who don't say, oh, I've never tried it, I'm not sure, it won't work for me. Yes, they know their organization more than others, but they're ready to try, experiment.
Right. Fantastic. So it's often, we spoke as part of prepping up for this conversation that, over these couple of months and over years of your experience in both dealing with crisis and taking your learnings from crisis, you had some fantastic, pointers and some thoughts. So, why don't we run over them, one by one? You're your only best friend in a crisis. So talk to us, your perspective on that philosophy.
Sure. See, a lot of them in the crisis, during a crisis, start doubting their own self.
Yeah, self-doubt is our best friend.
It's the biggest enemy. It's the biggest enemy. So, which is why I always say that you will find a lot of fair weather friends who will suddenly disappear. When you're being celebrated as the best CEO or the best startup or the best company, or if you go out and raise $100 million valuation, the same night you're going to have enough SMSs and WhatsApp messages and congratulations coming in, people will celebrate. In a crisis, a lot of them will disappear. And it is absolutely fine, because you will start doubting yourself. Did you do a big error that everybody disappeared? And that's why I always say, in a crisis, you are your best friend because you know your strengths and weaknesses. And you got to safeguard and play to your strength, because it is your company, it is your people that you are there. And I think that is what I always keep saying. Never doubt yourself, for which you need great emotional health, mental health, and physical health. So take care of your health. Stop doubting yourself. And if you're in doubt, speak to somebody you trust, so that you get that toxic out. I always call it, it's almost like a toxin. Get that negativity out. If you are positive and charged, you will at least give your best shot for resolving that crisis or facing that crisis.
Right. Fantastic. So when I'm looking to become my own best friend, and when I'm in a certain low, so self-doubt also creeps into, the self-doubt is our worst enemy. The enemy brings on another enemy, which is, pulling down your confidence. So when your confidence is low, that's the worst time to take, any strong decisions towards yourself, towards the company, towards your employees, your partners and customers and so on. So at this stage, how do you suggest, someone to work on their self-confidence and want to hold it and to build up from here on?
See, there are two aspects of personality that nobody can take it away from any individual unless they give it up. That's self-respect and self-esteem. And it's easier said than done, for which you need to be far stronger mentally. And I have a firm belief that most of the entrepreneurs have that. They have that conviction in themselves. That's how you have.
That's how you started. Yeah.
That's how you started. That's how you gave up all your comforts and became an entrepreneur and ready to walk the untested waters, so to speak. And don't give it up. And if you have already been funded and you have a board and you have your investor, you will definitely, amongst all the investors, you might have one person, the go-to person to talk to, who you think will not use your circumstance against you. That's very important for an entrepreneur. The biggest thing you want to do is protect the value that you have built for your business or the concept. You don't want somebody stealing it from you. So in that context, talk to somebody. If you have a lot of people in your team, you may want to talk to somebody else outside. You may want to talk to your best friend who is not from the industry, or from somebody from the industry association, or some of the companies that I'm associated with have the ability of the financial ability to go and seek out a professional like me to talk to. And you have to speak to somebody dispassionately, openly, about your fears, about the failures, and about what you think you want to do. And I think if you can get it out of your mind and if you can speak it, I can tell you most of the time when you have a kind of palpitation or almost faster heartbeat because you are bottling it up. Speak your mind and get a conviction. It won't be done overnight. It's a process. But when you come back and you say, this is what I thought, I have thought through all the ideas, I have thought through all the possibilities, and I'm going to try it. If it succeeds, great. I'll give my best towards that. And that's how each of the businesses have grown over time, right? I mean, every brand in India, whether it's a Cadbury, the crisis, or the Nestle, the Maggie crisis that they went through, it's phenomenal learning from all of them. They had large, I think, brand valuations to lose if they did not handle that crisis well. But they had the conviction in their own product, processes, and people. I think that's where it is important for an entrepreneur. That unless you have your self-confidence, the people who work with you, the core team, your core team, is going to be very jittery on a daily basis. Because people can sense fear. People can sense fear in others. People can sense negativity even if you don't utter a word. And in a startup ecosystem, an entrepreneur ecosystem, you are almost like family. You're bumping into each other every hour. So it is better that you actually talk it out quickly.
Right. So I like this concept, right? What you just spoke about, right? That the state of conviction comes from a very strong self-belief, and that self-belief and conviction also culminates in to what standards of performance we hold ourselves accountable, or we would like to be held accountable for. Now, at this time, it's very heart crunching to see that, hey, I'm unable to perform to the levels that I should have been there now, but also to take a hit on the chin to say that, hey, it's okay. I'm not alone. It's a global thing. There are things that are out of my control that I need to deal with it. And this may not be the hardest punch that I've ever got hit, but I need to figure out a way to stand up on this. So as part of the standing up, I need to take a bunch of decisions, including whether my current business stays on track. I need to completely pivot. If I completely pivot into an adjacent area or into a completely new business, what happens to my team? Taking the team decision is always one of the hardest, when you have to deal with it. We have seen the American, way of showing great empathy with Airbnb starting, the culture of, showing great empathy towards how you lay off people. India has always had a very strong sense of empathy towards its employees and its ecosystem, but never spoken much about it, right? Now, a lot of Indian companies are also trying to see if healthcare benefits and some insurance benefits can be extended beyond the tenure of the employees. Talk to us about, in these situations, how does one build, the mind on how do you look at adjacent markets or pivots from a business existential point of view, and also from, if you have to cut down the costs, what would be some of the parameters that one would look at apart from your people costs per se?
Sure, I think that's a very open question, and the formula will actually depend on the balance sheet, or the construct of your balance sheet, depending on the sector. It's going to depend on what is the actual proportion of each of your cost heads, and that's going to be very, very critical. And how do those components of cost head, if it is manpower, how essential it is. If you're saying that cost of borrowing, how essential it is. And each of those would have a different solution for different industries. But in a nutshell, I think very, very simple. The philosophy of any of this cost cutting or cost management has to be your very existence. I think entrepreneurs have to start thinking beyond a certain size and scale, that are you taking decisions because of the individual that you are, or the individuals that you deal with, that's your team, or because you're responsible as the CEO of an institution. An institution need not be a known name. Institution need not be a big name. Institution can still be a one-year-old startup. It's all your state of mind. So what are you building it for? I think that's the first philosophy I will lay it out. And I would advise people to look on the latter, which means you are actually wanting to build an institution. institution process does not mean they're going to replace you as a CEO. I mean, take that fear away. I think the promoters, the entrepreneurs wear two hats today. I think one, you started it and you own a substantial part of the company. And two, you are also the professional CEO of that particular company. You're a CEO because you have the ability to run the business and manage the team and manage all the complexities that come with the business. That's very, very essential. So in that context, if you separate ownership and actual management, then mentally you can take decisions as a management far easier than the ownership. Otherwise, you always have the battle. What if I do this? Will my valuation come down? Will my valuation increase? What happens to the people? Segregate the two. It's not easy. It is a state of mind that it takes a long time for you to get that to a state. The moment that you look at yourself as a professional CEO of the business, do what is good for that business to survive next 2 to 5 years minimum. Let's not worry about will there be another crisis, will the economy slow down, will my next round of fundraise slow down. Let's assume yes for all of this. Fundraise will slow down. Let's assume the crisis will continue for some time. That's a far better way of building a robust balance sheet than assuming all goody things. So if you're assuming that, now come to the points of what are the top critical areas of cost that you want to trim. And here you will have to be very, very judgmental, because some things you may want to actually keep, even though the cost might be higher, might give you a long-term return over a point in time that you need to continue building. So don't kill that project. Don't kill that particular thing. And also when you look at, let's say, the headcount, the key challenge always is, how do I deal with people, letting go of people? It's heart-wrenching. It's emotional. But you can still be nice. One of the concept that people are doing are extending Mediclaim. It's a very, very old idea. The fact is, I would even encourage look at few other things. Can you give positive references? Can you let some of them use your office almost like a shared service? They come in and go because they will be applying for newer jobs. If your laptop or mobile phones are not on the lease model and actually being bought out and being depreciated in a balance sheet, can you actually afford to give it to your employees you're retrenching to have them? Because end of the day, that's a tool that they cannot afford to buy today. Or can you, in certain cases, depending on your finances, can you afford to pay not just the Mediclaim, not just the deferred salaries and other things? Can you afford to pay simple things like the school fees for the kids of those employees you're retrenching? Imagine anybody who's a parent will have a sigh of relief as long as the kids' education doesn't get impacted, as long as their medical facility for themselves, the previous generation, the parents and the in-laws and the next generation is taken care and continued. It's a big, I think more an emotional worry that you're taking away from the people you're retrenching. And always remember, people, your employees are your brand ambassadors, but when they exit, they become your super ambassadors. So how you deal with them then, how you genuinely care for them makes all the difference. And sometimes, depending on your balance sheet, you would be actually realize that it doesn't cost much. If you're a small startup and you have only you're retrenching 10 guys, and if you have to pay 30,000, 40,000 rupees school fee for 10 of them, it's not much, the overall retrenchment. So there are countless ways that you can do it, or you can tie up with a counselor, local counselor, in case they want to reach out to speak to them. I think that's a reality. But the fact is, if everybody assumes that after this COVID economy, the jobs will come up in the next 1 month, 2 months, 3 months, I think let's not kid ourselves. It's going to take some time when the economy settles down. A lot of pain, according to me, is yet to come. When it is not shameful to sack people, people will do it. Today, not many people, and the known brands will not do it because it is publicly awkward to let go of people. And in our financial system, there is a moratorium that the government has given for most of the loans. So it is fine. You don't feel the pinch. The day
the moratorium ends. Yeah.
And that's when the real rubber hits the road moment comes in. And that's when I anticipate retrenchment. And again, one more thing is, retrenchment is always taken very personally and will be, because it impacts individual. And let's face it, it's a social standing. People in our society, if you don't have a job, it's almost like a stigma. So can you dispel that myth? Can you treat people with dignity? Can you allow them certain facilities which will, let's say, give them that dignity? Let them come into your office once in a while. Can you host a weekly get-together? It doesn't cost much. And it shows dignity, that you still respect them as the friends and the team members that they were, the colleagues that they are. But sadly, business decision allowed you to force you to let them go. But can you afford to get them back once a week, once in fortnight, to celebrate and to talk about all your failures, and are there any learning? Because end of the day, they still have some wisdom. So there are countless ways that we can do, and I think each of these solutions will have to be built on the culture that you have in your organization. Cultures are very, very varied, and belief systems are very, very varied, and the segments are very, very varied. And I'm sure there are enough solutions that people have in the market, and you can build on.
So this again goes back to one of the old sayings that being a CEO, you are not here to win a popularity contest. Right?
Absolutely.
But doesn't mean that you don't look at being empathetic to your decisions because it has a long impact life cycle.
Yep, that's true.
Fantastic. Let's talk about at this stage when raising funds is hard, in the typical way of raising from the PE world. Talk to us about alternate fundraising options, especially the debt markets. Now that a lot of banks are flushed with money from the government, especially in India. Is debt market really an option for technology companies who have raised a lot of money from VC funds? They have never explored debt market, especially from traditional institutions. They always look for a bridge loan, which is a fancy way of debt, raising a debt round from the same PE fund.
That's
but
right.
Now with PE funds also becoming more conscious, how attractive is really the debt market, and talk to us a little more about it.
Sure. I mean, debt market in India has always been very shallow, so while from the technology space, technology entrepreneurs have raised equity capital. It looks fancy, right? Because you're talking about large valuations, and it looks like you're flush with funds. And the fact is, in the debt market, you have to be very sure what do you need that debt for, and what is the cost of the debt. Can your balance sheet afford it? Or is it better off that you use equity to build some of those projects that you want to use that liquidity for? So I think in that context, there are only three tools that I see for tech entrepreneurs. One is extreme left, you have the equity capital. On the extreme other side, you have the debt markets, which could be a bank loan, which could be a mutual fund borrowing, which could be any other debt instrument. And in between, today the entrepreneurs, especially the tech promoters, have the concept of the venture debt, where you actually take debt because you don't want to dilute equity, and you're confident that your revenues and profitability will improve in 2 to 3 years, by which time you can retire that debt as well. And if you don't retire that debt by that time, it gets converted into equity and stuff like that. So the construct is only two, right? On one side you have the equity, other side you have the debt. The point is, why do you need that debt for? And do you have ability to raise incremental revenues which can actually service that debt? So don't take debt because it's nice. If you're going to raise debt, you're going to get rated as a company. You have to get your debt instrument rated. And the moment you're going to be rated, and if you default, forget your chance of raising money again. Forget your chance of raising equity again. Your valuation suddenly will dip. So which means it's a double-edged sword. So be careful. What do you need that money for? And it's almost like very, very simple, right? We're going back to the classic old way of doing business, whether you're a street side vendor or whether you're a multinational. You have to actually have far greater revenues and profitability than you actually borrow. Right. And that's a reality. So the debt markets, yes, today your banks are flush with funds. The banks, some of the banks will be wary of giving money to tech entrepreneurs unless you can actually qualify for the working capital loan and you can showcase ability to return the money. And that's the main part. And I think it is very, very classic moment. It's a tough moment to decide, do you really need that liquidity? Don't borrow just to keep liquidity, because you need to service it with interest.
Coming to the next set of points that we had discussed about, talk to us about this concept of over communicating and being accessible. These are times when due to the fear of failure or to the emotional tension that one is, basic human tendency is to withdraw, right? You withdraw from family, from social. Today online social events that families have, When you're going through a lot of emotional stress, basic human tendency is to withdraw. But that's not something that an entrepreneur, can afford to do, especially when you are in a very structured environment. So talk to us something, some tips and some ideas that you would recommend to handle communication and accessibility.
See, the classic point about why I always insist on over communicating in a crisis is simple. People have confidence. Crisis always blows up if it is lack of confidence. It is not crisis of actual business matter, then it becomes crisis of confidence. Let's say if Bimlesh in this company is going through a crisis, and if I try to reach Bimlesh and he's not picking up my call, I can try once, twice, thrice, leave a message, leave an email, all that. And if you don't respond, I start doubting you, not just your business. I start doubting your ability as an entrepreneur, ability as the CEO, ability as anybody, as a human being. I think that's why I always say, over communicate in a crisis. If people know that you're reachable, if people know that you're actually responding, and if I put myself in an entrepreneur's shoe, a lot of times entrepreneurs say that, hey, I don't have an answer now, but you keep questioning me and I don't have an answer. And I tell them, why don't you actually openly say, I know about this problem, I acknowledge, but I don't have an answer now. That's a far better answer than actually not picking up that call. Because then the other person who's asking that question says, hey, I know I called Bimlesh and he said he's been thinking through it and he has two different options, he's not decided and he's thinking through. Okay, let me call him after 2 days. He will call me after a day if he has an answer. I think that's where over communicating, whether it's across all stakeholders, internal and external. Internal because your teams look at your body language, the way you, and I'm not saying you should not scream, fret, fume, all that. There are very, very basic human emotions. Do all that, but respond. Tell people I'm okay. And always remember, as an entrepreneur, the biggest fear that most of us have is failure and how we will be judged, not only by the external world, but more about people closer to you, which means your family and friends. And I think that's what all of us have to take comfort. Their family. Communicate to them. Most of us in a crisis fight for the war at work or for the business, forget to actually respond positively to the family members. If you are going through a crisis, trust me, your family is also going through a crisis. They may not say utter a word, but your spouse, your children, your parents, your in-laws, everybody are watching and they're not judging you. They're worried for your health, safety, personal health, everything. So I think that's why you must communicate with your family, with your investors. I would recommend, if you are going through a crisis, get on a call, fix a call every 3 days, once a week, twice a week with your investors. It could be a quick 15-minute update. You don't need to sit and make a presentation, PowerPoint presentation. You can say, hey, I'm going to talk to you about three points. This is an update and this is work in progress. It gives them the confidence that you are taking time out to update them. Do the same with your bankers if you have taken a loan from them. Do the same with your vendors and the supply chain community that you deal with. Do the same with your core team on a daily basis. I used to call it the stand-up meeting. Every day you say that we're going to just chat for 10 minutes. I'm going to speak as a business head, I'm going to speak for 3 minutes, lay out what we have to do today. While we might have a goal to overcome this crisis, the annual business plan, the quarterly targets, all that are fine. What are we going to do today to get us closer to that? So stick to fundamental activities. What will create impact that day is those activities. Talk about it and talk about who would approach what failure. And every day, if you can also do a debrief in the evening about what failed, what worked, and celebrate it. Because a lot of times we scream and we went out during the day with our teams and we don't realize that some people have the tendency to take things very personally. So in a crisis, over communicate, you're better off. If you go into a shell, people start doubting your ability as an entrepreneur, as a professional.
Let's talk about the ability to hold existing relationships and building a new network and relationships at these times. What do you see? Do you see one, definitely among the entrepreneur fraternity, there's a lot more outreach, as I spoke about before. But beyond the entrepreneur ecosystem, do you think it's now a good idea to reach out to several other people to understand different perspectives versus trying to focus on how I continue to ride this particular crisis of the organization? talk to us your thoughts on networking and building the next wave of relationships that I need to start investing on.
Sure. I think I would use the word relationship. It's very strategic, it's very personal, and it's very long term. You don't build a relationship for all those tech entrepreneurs who are watching this video. Just because you send me a LinkedIn invite, it doesn't mean you have created a relationship with me. It's the first step of the relationship that you've reached out, and I will accept that invite. But the fact is, you may not want anything from me. I may not want anything from you. That's fine. But if you want something, have the clarity of saying what is it that you want. So the classic textbook mistake that I see in people is actually boasting, I have 30,000 connections. And I ask them, how many have you actually picked up the phone and spoken to? 100, 200, 300? In a crisis, how many of you can you reach out? You may not have spoken to them ever, but can you have the ability, your mindset, mental ability to actually say, hey, listen, I see these 3 people on my network and I will drop a message, fully aware that none of them might even respond. That's fine. So which means do not, in a networking or in a relationship, do not fear failure. You're knocking the door, somebody shall slam the door on you, it's fine. And you're used to business, right? And as an entrepreneur, you're used to this. So the point is, relationships take a long term to nurture. It is not win-win. It takes a long term time before it becomes win-win. And I think it is almost like learning. The ability and the willingness to learn, I think, creates better relationships over a point in time. And ability not to take things personally. Each of us human beings are very different personality, very different ways we react to things. Let's say on LinkedIn, I have had people who will do really stupid forwards. It's a professional networking ground. You don't forward jokes and WhatsApp jokes that you get. And you don't use words like, yo, how's you doing? You're not my best friend for that language. Neither are you probably the same peer set in the professional hierarchy. So I think some of those mistakes avoid. Be very clear, be sure what you want, and you may not want anything, but then participate. If you're using LinkedIn, participate. If you're writing something, post it. If you're reading something, comment on it, appreciate it, give a feedback. I think that's how people start noticing you. Otherwise, just by connecting and not doing anything about it, people just forget. And I think that's where entrepreneurs have to engage themselves. A lot of entrepreneurs I know who are very good at networking, very surprisingly, personally are introverts. And they would be more than happy sitting at home with a book and just a coffee or a green tea or a glass of wine. But they have made it a point that they must seek information, seek knowledge, and seek things from others what they don't naturally have or do. And I think that's what makes them successful entrepreneurs. And it's very humbling to learn from them because they've gone beyond their personality type to say that I want to learn, I want to meet new people, and that's about it. So I think networking, please be serious, and it's a serious job. Showcase your intent, and it's long term. It's not over.
Amazing insights, Srinath. Wonderful conversation. I think you if you want to share about any other last parting thoughts, I've run out of my questions. So any other pieces of wisdom, advice, and thoughts that you want to share.
So I want to share something. Crises keep coming and going, and their magnitude is very small to very large. It's almost like Japan has multiple earthquakes a day. Some are minor, some are major, and stuff like that. And if we learn from that, they have actually adopted and adapted a lifestyle around it. So if you're an entrepreneur, the road is going to be thorny. There are days when the world will celebrate you saying, hey, great valuation and all that. Don't get carried away by such exuberance. And just because some days are terrible, don't get bogged down. You can feel down, but you can push the bar, but don't beat yourself for it, for not achieving it. But at the same time, if you're paranoid, if you're getting sleepless nights, it's fine. You're an entrepreneur. At the end of the day, you have chosen to reach out to hundreds or thousands or millions of consumers to make their life better. And in that journey, you're responsible for many, many families directly because they are part of your team who work for you and who work with you. So it is fine to be paranoid. It is fine to be frustrated at times. and it is fine that you are constantly thinking about something to do better. But the fact is, for all of this, create an ecosystem where you don't take all this personally. And in that sense, just as a parting thought, I always say this, the Olympic motto of spirit of participation is fine. But for the corporate world, in the competitive world that we live in, it doesn't work. You cannot say I was also among the 100 companies that tried and sorry, buddy, the top 3 survive and they have disproportionate market share of probably almost 80%. And if you're not in that, you lost the race. And that's a reality. The world will judge you by, and everybody will judge you by, right from your investors. So if you want to be competitive, equip yourself to be competitive and be paranoid about it and push the bar very, very high on a daily basis. And I think crisis is a great time. Rebuild your organization, and all the best to all the entrepreneurs watching this.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Srinath. Wonderful conversation. I've definitely got a tremendous amount of insights from your vast experience and your experience of working with entrepreneurs in the last 4-6 months. Appreciate your time coming on Pitch Camp, and as I said, it's an honor and a privilege to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.